Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Michael Schroeder, and today I will be talking to you about my research paper called Organizational Culture Explored: How to Provide a Healthy Working Atmosphere. Let's begin. First, we're going to start with an overview. First, we're going to talk about the definitions involved with organizational culture. In order to have a knowledgeable discussion about really any topic, you need to have your definitions worked out so you can all be on the same page and work from a common ground. Next, we're going to talk about the difference between organizational climate and organizational culture. Then we're going to talk about how to develop a healthy organizational culture. Then how to apply what we've been talking about to an actual workplace. Then future suggestions, and finally a research question for you all to respond to in the forum. So for definitions, organizational behavior has been defined as the study of human behavior in organizational settings, of the interface between human behavior and the organization, and of the organization itself. Organizational culture, on the other hand, is a little bit different. There are a lot of definitions for it. They can be as simple and kind of layman's terms as, well, that's just the way we do things around here, to something a little bit more sophisticated, such as the pattern of basic assumptions that a given group has invented, discovered, or developed in learning to cope with its problems of external adaptation and internal integration. Now, I know it sounds a bit busy, but we'll discuss it a little bit further as in the presentation. Another definition that's very important to discuss here is cultural values. Cultural values are basically the values the employees need to have. They have to have them and act on them for the organization to carry out its strategic values. And again, we'll unpack that a little bit later as well. Now, there are some common elements that are involved in these various definitions. One of them, organizational culture, the first common element is it refers to a set of values held by individuals in an organization. So basically it's a common ground that individuals have. Second, some values and aspects are taken for granted. A lot of them aren't spelled out exactly. For instance, most people don't have to be told, don't steal something from your organization. It's assumed to be part of your culture. And thirdly, cultural definitions are often conveyed through a symbolic means. That's because sometimes it's really hard to grasp something intangible like culture, and it's sometimes easier to explain them in a story. Now we'll talk about the difference between organizational climate and organizational culture. For both of them, they both deal with social context in organizations, they both affect the behaviors of people, and they're both concerned with the overall work atmosphere. Now that's where the differences begin. Basically, organizational climate is temporary, it's current. Think of the climate like the weather. It can change from day to day if a cold front moves in, for instance. So the climate is based on the current atmosphere in the workplace. Organizational culture, on the other hand, is built on tradition, past experiences, various situations in the past that have carried over and created the overall, basically, atmosphere. The takeaway is organizational culture is therefore it's harder to alter and change because it's more established. And yet if you want to make an enacting change in the organization, you want to try to do the culture, not just the climate. So how do you develop an organizational culture that's intentional? One, and this is from a managerial or also an employee level, so just kind of keep that in mind with wherever position you happen to be. One, you need to formulate strategic values and goals. You have to have goals in order to really get somewhere intentionally. Secondly, you need to develop cultural values that are compatible with those strategic values. So you need to find a bridge between your goals and then cultural values to help make that happen. Thirdly, you need to create a vision and share it with your employees. If the employees don't know what it is, they will certainly not follow it. So you need to be able to establish that and then convey it to your employees. Fourth, initiate implementation strategies that allow those cultural values to establish roots in the organization. And then also, both managers and employees must reinforce the cultural behaviors that are consistent with the organization's strategy and goals. And again, that's allowing the culture to flourish in the organization, is being able to reinforce that both from the managerial perspective and the employee's perspective. Now, the hypothesis I was working with for my paper is applying lessons learned from organizational culture can improve both morale and efficiency in this case, my squadron. I'm an officer in the Air Force, and in my overall squadron itself, both in the members and the overall squadron. Now, the application of this, so how does this apply in this case to my squadron? Takeaways that I've realized: one, organizational culture is present in every organization, whether it's developed intentionally or not. Every organization has a culture. And again, because the next point is, because every organization is different, every manager, every employee, every situation is different, there's a plethora of things. So basically there's no real universal fix. Do this and you'll have a thriving organizational culture. But it doesn't detract from the value of figuring out why some organizations are successful, what makes a successful organizational culture. So to continue along with my squadron, basically some of the things that make it a unique setting is my squadron utilizes both enlisted and officers for very high responsibility tasks and missions, 24/7 operations, a lot of changing shifts, a lot of long work hours, and a lot of demanding missions. There's really no room for error with what we do. Basically, though it can be rewarding, it definitely leads to a lot of stress and generally low morale because people are just kind of constantly under the gun and under a lot of stress. So one of the key pieces of research that I found that helps basically enact a change is Malcolm Gladwell's components for influencing a person's culture. He had 3 main points. The first one is values of the organization that they're a part of. So an employee is very much affected by the values of the organization that they're a part of. Basically, does the organization value them as a person? Does it value getting the job done over the person? Things like that. And also having the employee have that head knowledge that, yes, my organization values me. Secondly, is who the person values as a hero. Now, obviously, this is on a personal decision, but the organization can still have an influence on that, say, by the leaders that the organization puts into place. Those can very easily be seen as heroes. So if the organization chooses a wise leader and someone who takes care of their people, that's going to be very easy for an employee to see as a hero and be able to make them a role model, and therefore influence the person's culture as a result. Thirdly is how the organization treats newcomers. Is the organization going to be like, here, kind of learn trial by fire, you have to learn on your own and learn it? Or do they come beside the newcomers, make them feel welcome, and help them learn the ropes so that they can do their job well? Those make a big difference in influencing a person's culture. And it's not that my squadron doesn't do that well. I think they do. But I think those areas could be further improved to raise that morale. The stress is still probably going to be there, but it can at least raise morale, let people know they're valued, give people good role models to follow, and then make sure people feel welcome and valued. Some areas for future research that I would suggest. As we've discussed, every single organization is different, and therefore also every single culture has value. Everyone's different, but there's still value in studying each organization's culture. Therefore, the takeaway from that is the more the better. So my future research suggestion would be have most every organization, that we have influence of, do an assessment of their organizational culture, figure out why it's successful, is it successful, or how could it be more successful. Another area that needs to be researched more is military organizational culture. Military life can be very different anyway. It's almost like a different culture entirely, so that is a unique setting that I think needs to be researched further. And then also, how an organization's culture shifts when you get a new CEO, a new boss, a new commander, something like that. Do they adapt the existing culture? Do they try to keep it the exact same, or do they try to institute a whole new one, and how do they go about that? I think that's some key values in research that is worth studying. Now, my discussion question that I'm really looking forward to hear your answer on is this. How can you, as an employee or a manager, influence your organization's culture for the better? It's very important, and we can all make a difference in the organization and the world in which we live. I look forward to hearing your thoughts. Thank you.